This is from a book called Love is a Mixtape by Rob Sheffield. I was reading a poem by my idol, Wallace Stevens, in which he said, "The self is a cloister of remembered sounds." My first response was, yes. How did he know that? It's like he's reading my mind. But my second response was, I need some new sounds to remember. I've been stuck in my little isolation chamber for so long, I'm spinning through the same sounds I've been hearing in my head all my life. If I go on this way, I'll get old too fast, without remembering any more sounds than I already know now. The only one who remembers any of my sounds is me. How do you turn down the volume on your personal drama earphones and learn how to listen to other people? How do you jump off one moving train, marked yourself, and jump onto a train moving in the opposite direction, marked everybody else?
Bottom, buttons, well, button up. That's all.
Right.
You can have that. Aside. Wind. Purple.
Check 1 2. This is the Sony MP3 recorder. Sound check test. Sounds like I'm a little too close. Put it on the table. How does this sound? Baba booey, baba booey. December 26th, 2015.
When it rains in a town, the water has to go somewhere. So, the MS4 is like the conveyance that gets the rain off of the pavement. When I was a kid, I really thought all of it just evaporated. I remember learning that sometimes it rains too fast for the ground to absorb it. I learned this recently, and it blows my mind. I just thought it all just, you remember the water cycle when you're a kid? It's it just goes like this. No. So that's what stormwater is all about. And I eventually found a place where I could really contribute because, as it turns out, any municipality that's on a water body has this MS4 permit. And there's all these requirements from the EPA that you have to fulfill.
Hey, yo, y'all can't stand right here.
I have so many recordings. Audio, video, and they're all saved in so many different places, different formats. My old phone alone has something like 900 unlabeled voice memos. And it's a lot of stuff. Little melodies on the piano, recordings of my kids where I'm trying to get them to repeat something funny they just said before I got my phone out, drafts of quotes for press releases for work. You hit that key? Sometimes when I'm working on this podcast, I'll just sort of state my intentions out loud to keep myself on the right narrative track, which rarely works. And just about kind of being, connected back to the terrestrial radio, make something about kind of being connected to the earth, but also being open to whatever the world's gonna bring you. And then that kind of gets into the Zach Parsons thing. You could also do top songs about turning the radio on or off. So Roadrunner, We've Had Enough, Radio Nowhere. There's probably a couple more that I will think about. And then I guess the other thing, I wanted to talk to Zach Parsons about the birth order thing in relation to Station 11 and the wonderful thing about Jeevan becoming his brother and sister. And so that's, I just want to talk about that on the podcast because I love it so much. I've started listening through all of them on the old malfunctioning phone. Not in a systemic way, not really. You can't. Phone turns off every couple of minutes. I'm just scrolling through and stopping in a random place. The same way I listen to all the cassette tapes that I have. I never listen from the beginning to the end. I put one on and rewind or fast forward a little and push play. Dropping into a memory. Although there are some I can't remember, can't even place, can't even figure out what was going on that I was trying to capture.
If the flow of my second wind comes, yet in the form of love, I do not understand the song, or the link between the sky and my feelings for the woman.
I'm actually at a conference. I'm in a hotel room right now, so hopefully the internet's not choppy.
had this sort of embarrassing overreaction to the slap at the Oscars. And it really wasn't even about the slapping part, that, Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. It was about the yelling. It was a look on his face when he was screaming at Chris Rock, and it's just that absolute loss of control, that surrender to anger, that I find to be so off-putting. And to have it be Will Smith, like my childhood hero, was sort of like crushing.
It's not that it's a good or bad thing. It's problematic because one of the things that happens when you have very low birth rates is your population's median age can increase fairly rapidly, and you're seeing that happen in Europe, Western Europe in particular. You see it happen in places like Japan. In a lot of developed countries, have very low birth rates, and it has caused some demographic difficulties, namely population that ages. The easiest way to keep your median age of a population low is to have people born at age 0. And the best evidence of that, Zach, is if you look at the states in our country that have the lowest median ages, it's Utah by far, because they have the highest by far birth rates. Other states, California, Texas, where they have populations, a lot of immigrant populations that tend to have higher birth rates. So the low birth rate, I hate to say it's a good or bad thing. It does cause issues. But in our case, in New Hampshire's case, and in a lot of developed countries' cases, in New Hampshire, it's really a sign of our success. What our low birth rate is really a product of is the fact that we have a very high percentage of our working age women who are actually in the labor force, and a very high percentage of women of working age who have a college degree. Those two factors largely account for very low birth rates. It's a recipe for having low birth rates. Women who participate heavily in the labor force and women who have higher levels of educational attainment.
Sometimes when I'm at the grocery store, I'm looking at the gum aisle. I'm like, hey, you know what, buddy? Why don't you let me know if you're not sugar-free? Am I right? The other day I was thinking a lot about the word rapport, like meaning getting along with someone. And I started thinking about how awesome it would be if I could ever get into an argument with the actor Michael Rappaport, because then afterwards I could report a poor rapport with Rappaport.
Alright, so it's like this, ready? I once said, till death do us part, but not even death could keep me from you. And even if the record jumps, we find a good place to pause, but only until we could resume. And even in a line of notes, we find our words phrased in quotes, telling the true stories of our love. We convince ourselves that this is right, Do you believe I knew at first sight it happened just like the movies said it would?
I keep having this thought lately, like before I try to set any thoughts down, that it's like, I just need to wait for this to get funny. The last 2 months of my life have basically erased my savings, for one thing. But have also just been a series of the most soul-deadening, bureaucratic nightmares. One after another after another. Something breaks, something goes missing, and then the process of rectifying that thing turns out to be impossibly complicated. You know, you exhaust all avenues of trying to fix the thing yourself, and then you just resign yourself to the fact that you just have to pay for it, and then it turns out, you know, you can't. No one has the product that you need. No one wants to be paid to do the work that you need done. And when you're faced with the kind of, like, the obsolescence of everything, you know, the fact that clearly almost everything is broken now and no one is doing anything to fix it, it's hard not to slip into despair. And of course, all of your petty problems are backdropped all the time by, you know, global infrastructural, natural and wartime disasters, which you can barely pay attention to because there's just so much else buzzing in your brain, and also makes you feel like such an asshole for all the other stuff. It makes you feel like an asshole for being distracted by the things that are going on in your life that by comparison are not nearly so bad. And it makes you feel like an asshole for almost slipping into despair. And you know you have it in you, somewhere, to overcome it, to laugh about it, to tell a story about it that makes your coworkers laugh and makes you, by extension, feel a lot better about the thing that you made it through. But you don't have it yet.
Turn lights all the way down.
Send lawyers, guns, and money. Ha! Send lawyers, guns, and money. Ha!
J-A-Y, I flow sick.
Send lawyers, guns, and money.
Gas, more money, gas, big money.
Ha! Send lawyers, guns, and money. Ha!
I spit the game, throw bricks.
Send lawyers, guns, and money.
Cash, money, cash, money.
Ha! Lawyers, guns, and money.
Money.
Ha! Ha!
One permanent hot hater since I skate.
Bang Bang, just all this year.
Mock Bang?
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh. Kiss Kiss.
Check.
Bang. Oh, book bang.
So there's this columnist, Jamel Bowie, who I follow on Twitter because I think all of his movie opinions are really on point. I have no idea if that's what he normally writes columns about, but that's what I see. That's what makes it through the algorithm to me. And one thing that he and I share is a mutual love of movies that he calls document dramas. This is movies that are primarily about solving a mystery by way of following the paper trail. Ideally, these movies involve lots of scenes of main characters at libraries and on various phone calls. I recently watched, for the very first time, probably the father of this genre, All the President's Men, starring Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford, and a show-stealing supportive turn from Jason Robards. This movie absolutely rocks. It's just dudes talking in offices and kitchens, shirt sleeves rolled up, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, sorting through notes. I wish it was 90 hours long. That one goes into Triple Spiral for sure. Another one that maybe doesn't quite make the cut is another movie that I recently experienced for the first time, which is The Firm. This is Sidney Pollack's incredibly long John Grisham adaptation with Tom Cruise as a hotshot lawyer who gets recruited by a law firm where maybe things aren't quite on the level. Play the other one again. Play the first thing you're playing again. and in which, the plot hinges for a while on Tom Cruise and Holly Hunter's ability to surreptitiously make photocopies. There's also a huge plot point that involves where a fax lands when it comes out of a machine late at night. We have lost so much in a world that has switched to digital, at least in terms of our storytelling capabilities. Then again, I did recently also watch, clearly I've been on a document drama binge, I watched The Report, starring Adam Driver. A really good movie that basically got missed by everybody because Amazon Prime has no idea how to market itself. The Report spends most of its runtime stuck in a windowless room with Adam Driver and his team, which includes Sarah Goldberg from Barry. And when they're in that room, just staring at computer screens and piecing together the story of the CIA's enhanced interrogation program in the aftermath of 9/11, and they're just talking and sometimes shouting. I mean, there's nothing better to me, personally. Now, of course, when this movie moves out of the office and into CIA black sites and into Senator Dianne Feinstein's office, it loses a little bit of steam. But it also picks up some last-minute credit by being absolutely merciless about the complicity of the Obama administration in downplaying this controversy. Still, it's maybe number 4, just below the official triple spiral, where I guess All the President's Men is number 3, and number 2 is a David Fincher masterpiece known as The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Have you seen this movie in a while? It might be the coolest movie ever made, and boy oh boy does it have boxes and boxes of document drama. When Daniel Craig is sitting at a meeting at his magazine office with his glasses dangling off one ear, it's the coolest any person has ever looked. Rooney Mara got her nipples pierced for this movie. Also, I love movie trailers, and the initial teaser for this movie, which does this quick cut montage to Karen O's viscerally sick cover of Immigrant Song and features the tagline, "The Feel-Bad Movie of Christmas." It's the best movie trailer of all time. The only reason that this movie's not number 1 on the document drama triple spiral is because of Spotlight, which is maybe flat out also in my triple spiral for the greatest movies ever. I've gone on extended riffs about Spotlight before, but, there's a scene toward the end of this movie where Michael Keaton sits in a parked car and watches trucks of newspapers leave the printer and head out into the world, about to drop a bombshell on the people of Boston, and it makes me tear up every single time. Keaton is just sitting there in awe of the power and the crushing duty of journalism, rocked to his core by the impact of both what's happened and how he's helped bring it to light. It's fantastic. Spotlight is so good. God, I love these movies. What it feels like is this cloud. Not a cloud, because a cloud isn't heavy enough. And not a fog, because a fog is too connotative already when we're talking about the brain, right? Sometimes it feels more like a brick, but a soft brick. Marlowe. A brick of heroin. Eric. It's like a cloud. A hot cloud that settles, he gestures near his temples, up here, and it just seizes my brain with a kind of furious sadness. It throws me into a hedge maze of negativity, and I just keep looping through it, trying to find my way out. And it stays there for hours. I stay in the loop for hours. And when I get out, it's like recovering from a cold. You don't really notice the moment you feel better. You just look around and realize you left it somewhere behind you. And I don't want to say it's depression, because it's temporary. But it's chronic. But also, calling something depression feels a little aggrandizing. People are suffering. People are suffering a lot more than me. Mostly, I'm doing fine. And I don't want to contribute to distractions from the suffering of other, more deserving people. Deserving of comfort, not suffering. Comfort for their suffering. But is it depression? Do I have depression? A beat. Marlowe. Maybe it's a brain tumor. Title. I've been listening to Joanna Newsom a lot lately. Even before she made this surprise appearance at a Fleet Foxes show and maybe has new music coming. Maybe I somehow sensed that in the vibrations of the earth. But anyway, I don't know if you have ever taken the 17 minutes to sit and really listen to her song, Only Skin, but I highly recommend it. The section from about 12 minutes and 30 seconds to about 15 minutes is maybe the most shocking and emotionally annihilating music ever recorded. The album that it's from, it's from 2006, I think, and it's in general a great place to start if you're new to Joanna Newsom. And there's this line earlier in the record that I find myself reflecting on, she rhymes meteoroid with bone thrown from the void, which is by itself worth celebrating as a rhyme. But I also think of that line as it's like describing her music. Her music is this ecstatic and insane explosion of beauty coming from an indifferent and cold universe. And how does that beauty manage to exist in that void? Does that make it more beautiful? Sometimes I think it does. One reason that I haven't put on a Joanna Newsom record in a while probably is because she's so obsessed with the fragility and the mortality of tiny things. You know, animals and children. Animals as metaphors for children. And we had a miscarriage last year. And I think that has animated a lot of how I have felt and how I've been talking. Like, I know I haven't said it out loud, but I kind of feel like I've been saying it all the time. I feel like loss radiates out from me all the time and in all my interactions. The pregnancy had been far enough along, you know, that we'd let it slip to a few people that it was happening. Like, I'd even said so at work. And then, you know, when it didn't, when it happened, I let people know. But I guess not everybody, because it was a few months later. And somebody said to me, like, oh, you know, your wife must be pretty far along by now. And I remember thinking, like, they don't know? Like, how could they not know? I was not myself for a very long time. I remember in the days and the weeks after, sometimes I'd be talking to someone and I could hear my voice start to shake, and I couldn't control it. And all I could think about was how I knew they could hear it. I knew they could feel that something was wrong with me. Maybe they couldn't, but something definitely was. I mean, one day I remember I got out of my car and I was walking into the office, and I realized that not only had I left my car running, I'd left the door open. How could they not know? I'm reading a book right now that's called Perfect Tunes by Emily Gould, and it takes place in turn-of-the-century New York, you know, as in the early 2000s. I know that's a weird way to express turn-of-the-century, but it's accurate. Anyway, I knew from reading the back of the book there was going to be like a time jump at some point. Sometimes that happens to you when you read a book. You look at the jacket and you know something's coming, so then you're kind of looking out for it the whole time. So that was happening as I'm reading this book. And I get to this one chapter that says, you know, and then we woke up the next morning and everything had changed. And I remember thinking, like, oh, what happened? And I go to the next chapter, and it seems like it's jumped ahead a little bit, like the characters are out of the city. And it took me a couple of pages to think, oh, right, yes, something did happen in New York around that time. How could I not have known, right? I mean, is there a novel written in the last 22 years that takes place in New York City and doesn't include 9/11? And I kind of felt annoyed, you know, like, this again? But then I realized that, you know, what novels did with 9/11 is exactly what I keep saying we should be doing with COVID-19. We got to talk about it. We have to get into it to get through it. One of my personal heroes, Natasha Lyonne, recently said on the show Poker Face, you got to revisit the past to get past it. Which is why I guess I just suddenly decided to talk about the baby that we lost in the middle of all of this. Although, I don't know if I'm really ready to say that much more about it. Explain to me again the steps of how to make a flag.
You have to draw a piece of cardboard.
Okay.
You have to draw an American flag.
Okay, so how do you draw an American flag?
You draw the piece of sheet, and then you glue it to a stick.
Okay.
And then that's how you make a flag.
That sounds perfect.
And then how you And then when you make a kite, you have to draw it maybe in a butterfly, maybe in American flag, maybe in American.
Okay, and then do you stick it on a stick again?
A string.
It's probably like a little disingenuous to try to draw too bold of a line between, the miscarriage of last year and the helplessness of this year. But obviously there's something to that. I've been reading this essay about this experiment looking into the psychological effects of starvation. It was conducted in 1944 when you could still do stuff like that to people. And it is profound, the impact that it has on people, because a lack of access to food is traumatic. And this essay was drawing a direct connection to the state of grocery stores in March of 2020, with this starvation experiment and the lingering impact of even controlled, not simulated starvation, essentially, right? Like these people in the 40s who these scientists were studying the effects of starvation on them, they were kept in very controlled circumstances and still fed enough calories to survive. It was almost more just the idea of starvation that was itself traumatic. And so, this winter, when the power was out at my house, and my children were telling me how cold they were, and I had to get them out of the house, but the basement was flooding, and I needed to get a generator to fix the flooding basement, but I couldn't get a generator. Ultimately, everything was going to be okay. And I knew that, but I can't even really go back and access how traumatic and stressful and terrifying those couple of days were. I could not turn it off. In the essay about starvation, there was this part that really struck me. They said, Americans tend to react to deprivation with self-deprivation. So after periods of, economic depression, after periods of war, after periods of crisis, you see a lot of crazy fad diets. It's probably no coincidence that the Ozempic, whatever it's called, the shot that makes you not eat, that's here now. So I can draw a line, from this brutal winter back to last summer, back to the start of the pandemic. I can see how that path follows me back to where I am now. In the same way that I'm deriving comfort from these movies where people follow the trail and understand the story and figure it out. But is that real? Do I really have a sense of the scope of the impact of the last couple of years on me and my behavior and the things I'm doing now? Probably not. There's probably so much that I'm doing that I don't even see. Not yet. Maybe never.
Let's just try.
But maybe the story helps anyway.
I have a sorry card for me with riding a plane.
Okay, so I guess I want to talk about Spotlight being the greatest movie of all time because of the way it represents, journalistic rigor and scrappy underdogs taking down a giant system with just absolutely incomprehensible levels of corruption. And, you know, what I like about it is that it's a movie that's about what we once were, but also about what we could be again. And then I also want to talk about Sea of Tranquility as being like probably the best pandemic novel. It's probably written very early in the pandemic, but the way that it sort of deflects that by being mostly about a different pandemic is very slick and smart. And it just really captures pandemic anxiety and just this kind of like this insane desire that something different could happen instead, which is just so familiar and painful. But that feeling, like, what if instead it was something else? I don't know. What if instead this didn't happen?
Alright, so this is another quote from the Rob Sheffield book. It's the same with people who say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Even people who say this must realize that the exact opposite is true. What doesn't kill you maims you, cripples you, leaves you weak, makes you whiny and full of yourself at the same time. The more pain, the more pompous you get. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you incredibly annoying.